Apple's appeal for an emergency hold on app fees was denied. It turns out you can train AI models without copyrighted material. It's just a pain in the ass. And OpenAI appealed a court order forcing it to preserve all ChatGPT data. It's Friday, June 6th, and here's a quick look at tech in the news this morning from Engadget. A court has denied Apple's appeal for an emergency stay on a ruling over purchases made outside the App Store in the U.S. That's according to a report by TechCrunch. Now, that means Apple will no longer be able to collect fees when users click on links within an app that takes them to an external site for a purchase. The judges stated in the filing, quote, "After reviewing the relevant factors, we are not persuaded that a stay is appropriate," end quote. Earlier this year, Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers ruled that Apple violated her 2021 ruling on Epic's lawsuit against Apple. The judge originally ordered Apple to allow developers to direct users to other payment systems that would let them bypass the App Store's usual 30% commission fee. But Apple still took up to a 27% cut for external purchases while showing users a scare screen warning that they'd lost the company's protection if paying outside the App Store. As part of the ruling, Gonzalez-Rogers ordered Apple to stop collecting fees for external payments in the U.S. immediately. She also prohibited Apple from creating rules that would prevent developers from presenting customers with buttons and links for external payments. Apple complied with the order but immediately filed an appeal for an emergency hold on the ruling so it could resume collecting fees on external app purchases. And that appeal has now been denied. Epic CEO Tim Sweeney wrote in an X post, "The long national nightmare of the Apple tax has ended." Apple has yet to comment on the matter. Other companies with a large presence on iOS like Amazon and Spotify have already moved quickly to establish external payment methods for their apps. Epic itself resubmitted Fortnite to the App Store but was denied, calling Apple's actions blatant retaliation. However, on May 20th, Fortnite finally returned to the App Store in the U.S. Artificial intelligence companies claim that their tools could not exist without training on copyrighted material. It turns out they could, it's just really hard. And to prove it, AI researchers trained a new model that's less powerful, but much more ethical. That's because the LLM's dataset uses only public domain and openly licensed material. The paper, via the Washington Post, was a collaboration between 14 different institutions. The authors represent universities like MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and the University of Toronto. Nonprofits like Vector Institute and the Allen Institute for AI also contributed. Now, the group built an 8-terabyte ethically sourced dataset. Among the data was a set of 130,000 books in the Library of Congress. After inputting the material, they trained a 7 billion parameter large language model on that data. And the result? Well, it performed about as well as Meta's similarly sized Llama 2 7B from 2023. The team did not publish benchmarks comparing its results to today's top models. Performance comparable to a 2-year-old model was not the only downside, though. The process of putting it all together was also a grind. Much of the data could not be read by machines, so humans had to sift through it. Co-author Stella Biederman told the Washington Post, "We use automated tools, but all of our stuff was manually annotated at the end of the day and checked by people. And that's just really hard." Figuring out the legal details also made the process hard. The team had to determine which license applied to each website they scanned. So, what do you do with a less powerful learning language model that's much harder to train? Well, if nothing else, it can serve as a counterpoint. Back in 2024, OpenAI told a British parliamentary committee that such a model essentially could not exist. The company claimed it would be impossible to train today's leading AI models without using copyrighted materials. Last year, an Anthropic expert witness added LLMs would likely not exist if AI firms were required to license the works in their training datasets. Now, Of course, this study will not change the trajectory of AI companies. After all, more work to create less powerful tools doesn't jive with their interests. But at least it punctures one of the industry's common arguments. Just don't be surprised if you hear about this study again in legal cases and regulation arguments. OpenAI has appealed a court ruling from last month that forces it to retain ChatGPT data indefinitely as part of a copyright violation case brought by the New York Times in 2023. CEO Sam Altman said in a tweet on X that the judge's decision compromises our users' privacy and sets a bad precedent. In May, federal judge Ona T. Wang ordered OpenAI to preserve and segregate all ChatGPT output log data that would otherwise be deleted due to a user request. She said that the ruling was justified because the volume of deleted conversations is significant. The directive noted that the judge asked OpenAI if there was a way to anonymize the data to address users' privacy concerns. The New York Times sought the order so that it can accurately track how often OpenAI violates its IP, including instances when users requested deletion of chats. A federal judge allowed the original case to proceed, agreeing with the New York Times' argument that OpenAI and Microsoft's tech had induced users to plagiarize its materials. In an FAQ on its site, OpenAI painted the order as a privacy issue without addressing the millions of alleged copyright violations, writing, "This fundamentally conflicts with the privacy commitments we have made to our users. It abandons long-standing privacy norms and weakens privacy protections." The New York Times and other AI copyright cases are still ongoing, as courts have not yet decided whether OpenAI, Google, and other companies infringed copyrights on a massive scale by scraping material from the Internet. The tech companies have argued that training is protected by fair use copyright law and that the lawsuits threaten the AI industry. Creators of that content, in turn, argue that AI harms their own livelihoods by stealing and then reproducing works with little to no compensation. Thanks for listening. There's more to these stories and more tech news at Engadget.com. This episode featured journalism from Steve Dent and Carissa Bell and was voiced and produced from the sound studios of Spoken Layer by me, Steve White. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll be back on Monday morning with more tech news from Engadget.